We are just so incredibly thankful. As a representative, Auxiliary Lieutenant Ali Holland from the Salvation Army of Pine Rivers, and we're so incredibly thankful to have Peter as part of our Red Shield breakfast. The funds that we raise during this breakfast go to support an incredible amount of our programs and just to change lives. So, absolutely so.
Morning everyone, thank you for being here. Look, it's a pretty uplifting start to the day when you can spend time with the Salvation Army and listen to those truly moving stories. Two young ladies talking about their own journey in life and the way in which the Salvation Army has helped them really find a different path and a very bright future. So I've been really proud to be part of the Salvation Army team here locally as part of the Red Shield Appeal Breakfast. We've been here for over 20 years, and providing that leadership and support to our local community means that we're able to give money back to the causes that are important. Homelessness locally, making sure that kids who don't have a future in a mainstream school can get an education and a better outcome. It's about providing support to families and, as pointed out upstairs, young families who are coming in now, middle-aged couples who are coming in, both working and asking for food hampers and support from the Salvation Army. That's the reality of life for too many Australians, and that's the case here as well. Look, as we approach the final stages of this campaign, Australians know that there is a sliding doors moment for our country. You've got a lot of families who are really doing it tough, a lot of small businesses who have closed over the last 3 years, and this election really is a referendum not about the election campaign but about the last 3 years of government. Are you better off today than you were 3 years ago? And what will it be like under 3 more years, particularly if it's a Labor Greens government, where extra spending will mean extra inflation, which means higher prices, including higher interest rates. On the alternative side, the Coalition has a positive plan to help Australians. We want to cut the cost of everybody's fuel bill by 25 cents a litre. And that's going to save you about $14 a tank. We're going to give back $1,200 by way of tax rebate to an average taxpayer, and that means that you can pay some bills, you can deal with the cost of living pressures that you're under. We are going to restore the dream of home ownership again to young Australians. That's been dashed over recent years, and I want to make sure that we can provide support to local communities to make our communities, our suburbs, our towns, our regions safer. And people are less safe in our country today than they were 3 years ago. We're also going to make our country stronger, and we're going to make sure that we manage the economy successfully. They are the hallmarks always of a Liberal National Coalition government, and there's no doubt in my mind that we can deliver that in government as well. Just a final point, then I'm happy to take some questions. Annika Wells, ex-Cabinet Minister in the Albanese government, is now offered a position in relation to The Voice as well, obviously lending her support to Penny Wong's position. That is that The Voice, in some form, presumably through legislation, is going to be a part of the Albanese government's next term in power if they're successful on Saturday. I just ask Australians to think about that for a second. You sent a very clear message to the Prime Minister that you said no to The Voice, and now the Prime Minister is saying back to you, well, we've got this secret plan when we're in government to reintroduce The Voice in the form of legislation. Now, whether that's truth-telling or macarada, whatever it might be, the government should be upfront and honest, and the Prime Minister should be honest with the Australian people on The Voice and what this means for people if they vote Labor at this election. I'm very happy to take some questions.
Mr Dutton, your Liberal candidate in Bennelong has been heard multiple times now at polling booths trying to convince voters to support him by saying that you won't be leader forever. What does it say about the desirability of you staying on as Liberal leader after the election if a candidate in a key marginal seat thinks it's actually a selling point that you could shuffle off?
Well, I note that Scott's denied those rumours. What he's telling and what all of our candidates are telling the Australian public is that you can't afford 3 more years of Labor. 3 more years means higher costs, power prices are up, gas prices are up, you pay $14,000 more for a Ford Ranger, you'll pay 25 cents more a litre for petrol, and this government has been a failure, and I think that's what people are concentrating on as we get to the election.
Are you an asset to the Liberal campaign?
Yes.
Mr Dutton, Noel Pearson this morning has called for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history and culture to be taught as a standalone subject rather than across multiple subjects. Do you agree with his comments, and would such a change be reflected in the national curriculum if you win government?
Well, I've been a strong supporter of Noel Pearson for a long period of time, so I think we should take on board carefully what he's had to say. But as we go into the election, I think the main thing people are concentrating on is which side of politics is better off to help them and their families over the course of the next 3 years. Who can cut the cost of petrol by 25 cents a litre and
So any change to national curriculum?
That's what the coalition government will do.
On costings, will you hold another press conference later this afternoon after we've had a look at them?
Jane Hume and Angus Taylor will present our position this afternoon. What it demonstrates, though, is that as we've said all along, as Australians know from their own experiences, the economy will always be better managed under a Liberal national government. The lower debt means interest rates come down.
And just on productivity, which
we're just going to do one.
I hadn't finished the question. You're the leader of the party, though. Shouldn't we be able to ask you questions about details of the costings, and are they inaccurate because they don't include nuclear?
They're absolutely accurate, and as you can see from the Labor Party policies, when Jim Chalmers put it out, the Prime Minister wasn't there with him, so I'm not getting into beltway issues. I think what Australians will see out of our figures is that our economy is better off under a Liberal government, and management of our economy is always better handled by a Liberal government. We always make sure that we have support for families. 30,000 small businesses have closed over the last 3 years, and behind each one of those stories, somebody's lost their home, they've lost their savings, they've lost their dream. I want to make sure that we can support families, and I think that's what this election's about.
Mr. Dutton, you talk a lot about Labor's tax changes targeting unrealised capital gains. You rarely mention that those changes would only affect a very tiny proportion of Australians, the very wealthy. Are you trying to give average Australians a false impression that it's going to affect them as well?
So I think the Labor Party policy is out there for all to see. It's not indexed, and many people will be caught by this in the coming years, and Australians should know that if you own shares, or if you've got a house, for example, a rental property, and it goes up in value, the shares go up in value under the government's proposal in that circumstance, you're taxed on an unrealised capital gain. That is that you get taxed before you sell the asset to realise the profit to pay the tax. It's like a wage earner having to pay the tax before they get their salary at the end of the week. And that, along with negative gearing changes that you would see under a Labor Greens government, Australians can't afford 3 more years of a bad Albanese government, and particularly not a Labor Greens government, which would just drive up the cost of interest rates.
Mr. Dutton, we're here in Queensland, the state which produces a good chunk of the gas for the East Coast.
Sorry, mate.
A state which produces a good chunk of the gas for the East Coast. Under your gas reservation policy, analysts have said that Queensland could end up being left worse off, and Toomey has suggested it could be unconstitutional because it's essentially a tax on Queensland. What do you say to Queenslanders who feel like local industry could be gutted by this policy?
Well, our policy is about getting more gas into the domestic market. So if we do that, as Frontier Economics points out, we can bring the cost of wholesale gas down by 23%. Now, if we do that, just think about that. For a club here, it means that their energy costs come down quite significantly.
But what does that mean for
Queensland
industry?
Gas is used in the generation of electricity. So electricity bills come down for households as well as for businesses. That's how we can get Labor's costs down. It's how we can bring the cost of food down and the cost of manufacturing down. And a big part of the policy is making sure that we can support new reservations to come online, including here in Queensland. And there's $1 billion to provide support for infrastructure, etc., in relation to pipelines and distribution. So our policy actually helps the industry here in Queensland and across the country, because if we can get more gas into the system here, as the independent energy economist points out, the price of wholesale gas comes down by 23%. Under the Labor Party's policy, all your promise at this election, and the Prime Minister has said this clearly, the cost of gas is going up under Labor. The cost of electricity will go up further, and that's why Australians just can't afford it.
Mr. Dutton, do your costings factor in the potential impacts on productivity that will come with cutting the skilled migration program?
Well, we've done work with the PBO, and that'll be reflected in our costings that we released today.
Will there be details on the migration cuts?
Mr. Dutton, you've denied an interview last week with Daily Oz in the lead up to the election, even though Gen Z and millennial voters are going to outnumber older generations at the ballot box. How do you plan to reach younger voters if you are elected as the Prime Minister?
Well, as we've pointed out, for younger Australians who are interested and really concerned about climate and transition and decarbonisation, the coalition is the best party for you, because we're the only party with a plan to achieve net zero by 2050. And the government's plan is not going to achieve their targets, and they're already behind on their targets. That much is obvious. In relation to housing, we're going to provide support to young Australians who have lost the dream of home ownership, because Labor's had a big Australia policy where they brought 1 million people in over the last 2 years, which is a 70% increase on any 2-year period in our country's history. So I think if you have a look at the policies, that we've got a 5% deposit, the ability to get a deposit together more quickly, including through your super if you so choose, making sure that for your $650,000 of mortgage, the interest you pay there, that is tax deductible. That's about $1,000 a month, and that's incredibly important. Now, we will continue to support young Australians and older Australians through the 25 cent a litre cut in our fuel excise as well. And I think there are many reasons why young Australians would want to vote for a coalition at this election.
Acknowledging that you've held different portfolios during that time, 20 to 24 years is a really long time for someone to work in the same place. Do you feel like you're still learning in the job even though you've held it for 20 years?
I'm sure I do.
Mr. Dutton, you've said that you'll save $7 billion a year by cutting that Canberra APS by 41,000 over 5 years. Will the costings today back that, and will they take into account the cost of any redundancies and any additional external consultants?
Well, the costings will include all of the policies that we've announced, and we've announced some excellent policies. 25 cents a litre cut to fuel tax is going to save people $14 a week.
The question was not
and
about
more than that. We're going to provide support to Australians by giving $1,200 back through a tax rebate. And we're going to provide support to young Australians to get into housing. These are the policies which are important to Australians, and we'll do it responsibly, and we've got savings as you identify as well, and all of that will be reflected this afternoon. But if you've got a big spending Labor government, you've got upward pressure on inflation. This is what the Reserve Bank governors warned about. I want to make sure that we can bring downward pressure on inflation, and that means that we can drop interest rates, and interest rates will always be lower under a coalition government, and that's something I'm very proud of, and it's something that we'll strive for in that. No.
Mr. Dutton, you've outlined a lot of things that will be in the costings this afternoon. There is a lot of detail in these things, and it just seems they come out later and later and later with every campaign. I know you say Labor does the same thing. I'm not so sure that the actions of your opponent justify your own in every case, but if they keep coming out this late, they'll be coming out on a Saturday afternoon after people have voted. Don't people deserve to have a look at this detail from both sides earlier in the campaign so they can make a considered judgment? Otherwise, it's just suspicious that you're hiding something.
Well, Mark, the detail will be there for people to see, and what they'll see is that debt will be lower under us by $40 billion, and that means that we don't have Labor's spending problems. And the problem with this government is that they've spent $425 billion extra, which is what's driven up interest rates. So if you wonder why interest rates have gone up 12 times under this government, you know it's because they spend so much, and the Reserve Bank governor has pointed that out. Now, we've been responsible in relation to the PBO work that we've done in relation to the costings otherwise, and all of that will be presented today in accordance with the rules.
Mr. Dutton.
Sorry, do you want to go to...
Yeah, please, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Dutton. I have to say, we're missing the fun tie today. Where's the fun tie? You're here in Dixon today. You've got to win back 20 seats to win government. Why are you in your seat? Are you worried about Dixon?
I'm here today for the Red Shield Appeal breakfast. So I do it every year, and I clear whatever's in my diary to do it. And,
But are you worried about your seat?
and I've been supporting the Red Shield Appeal for almost 25 years in my seat, and we've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it was set today. I think probably the organisers thought there was going to be an election in April, and so it was set for today. But I'm here as a proud supporter of the local Salvation Army, and I want to thank everyone who's upstairs donating at the moment, because that will help young Australians who are in need in my electorate. It'll help the homeless, and it'll help the work that the Salvos do.
So you're not worried about
I'm
losing
really,
your
really
seat?
pleased to be here.
Mr. Dutton, earlier in the campaign, when you were asked about schools and curriculums, someone asked you about a woke agenda in schools, and you spoke about the potential for a coalition government to condition funding to the states based on their curriculum. Sarah Henderson, the education spokesperson, said the coalition would have more to say about that in the campaign. I don't think that detail has come through yet. Would you be able to tell us what changes, if any, you would like to see made to school curriculums, additions, subtractions, so forth?
Well, what we'll do is we'll work with parents to reflect what they want to see in the education system, and that is a good education for their children, and a coalition government. When we were last in government, despite what the Prime Minister has told you, the funding went from 13 billion to 25 billion a year, which was significant. So we'll continue to fund education at a record rate. We want our kids to get the best possible
But on
education.
curriculum, what would you want to change?
No,
What would you change about the curriculum? Going back to that question.
we don't have any.
Yeah, well, in your
Sorry,
preamble-
next one. That's it.
Yeah, in your preamble, you
No,
said-
sorry, but we're just doing one each.
No, he was just getting you to answer that question.
Yeah, we're just going to.
Mr. Dutton, in your preamble, you said that the election was a referendum for the past 3 years, not the election campaign. Do you concede that the campaign hasn't got a smooth resolution?
I just think Australians now are most worried about what the next 3 years looks like, and they're worried that if there is an Albanese government, it's going to be higher costs, and that's what the last 3 years have been. And Australians can't afford 3 more years of Labor, so I want to make sure that we can have a credible alternative, which is exactly what we've done. We're saying to Australians that we're going to give you immediate assistance now to help you through the cost of living crisis that Labor's created. The 25 cents a litre cut off petrol is important. It's also important to give people back some of the tax that they paid. We do that through the $1,200 rebate. Australians will be asking themselves, am I better off today than 3 years ago? And of course the Prime Minister couldn't answer this question at the press club. And the Prime Minister has been able to run a campaign to say, you know what, vote for the Labor Party at this election because you're better off, and list the 5 things that you're better off on. It's not the reality. And that's why the negative campaign has been so pronounced by the government. They're not telling people about the last 3 years because it's been a disaster for families. And I want to make sure that we can help families, which is what a coalition government will always do, through better management of the economy and providing assistance to people in the immediate now, here and now, and then bringing in changes which will bring costs down across the economy. That's through better economic management and obviously our energy plan.
Mr. Dutton, did anybody from your office ask the exclusive brethren to help the coalition campaign in this election?
Josh Frydenberg at the weekend suggested that you might need a Scott Morrison-style miracle to win his election. How are you feeling? Do you need a miracle to win?
Well, I feel confident, I feel good about where our candidates are, and we've selected some amazing people, and we've got a record number of doors knocked in electorates. In many cases, and this is evidenced in the research that we've done, our candidates have got a higher name ID than some lazy sitting Labor members. They have done more work, they're more connected with their local electorates, and that's why I think you'll see a lot of surprises seat by seat on Saturday night, because there is an enormous amount of work that's been undertaken on the ground, and I have no doubt there are a lot of Australians who are saying, you know what, I haven't voted Liberal before, but I'm going to vote Liberal at this election because I've just had enough of not being able to afford to pay my bills. That's the reality of life, and I think that will be one of the issues obviously that decides the election.
Mr. Dutton, just back on costing, you authorise the PBO to release all relevant documents with the details of
Well, Jane and Angus will provide the details this afternoon in relation to costings. Well, they'll provide details. Yeah.
Mr. Dutton, your electorate in Dixon is the state's most marginal. What is it that makes people in this electorate so susceptible to voting Labor?
If you have a look at Dixon, it had what they used to call a one-term curse. And Michael Lavarch was here, and a good local member, but just for one term. And then Tony Smith won the election, and he was here for just one term for the Liberal Party. And then Cheryl Curnow won, but just for one term, and I won from her in 2001. And we've been able to hold Dixon since then. So it's always been a marginal seat, and it's been a marginal seat because as you look around us, there's a diversity of suburbs and socio-demographics, and in my electorate, it's a classic example of how people are really doing it tough. Here in Bray Park, there'll be a lot of families at the moment who are going without food. That's the reality of their lives. And I've worked hard to represent them in my time in Parliament. We've provided support with the Salvation Army, as I say, for over 20 years. We've provided support to families by way of financial support and arranging for housing and helping people through their darkest hours. when they've had family or loved ones take ill overseas. There are lots of issues that we've helped on, literally probably thousands over the years, and I'm very proud of that work. So yes, Dixon's always a marginal seat, and yes, we've got a teal pretending to be a teal who's actually green, and Labor and the Greens and the Teals work together, as we've seen elsewhere. But one of the things I know about people in my electorate is that they're smart, and they see through the false Labor campaigns and the false Green campaigns and the false Teal campaigns, and that's been the case in subsequent elections since 2001. So Dixon's always a tight seat, but I never take it for granted. I always work hard, I always have, and I'm always very grateful to the people in this amazing part of the world.
Mr. Dutton, just on this election not being a referendum on the campaign, you see the polls, you hear the commentary, history doesn't allow do-overs, but is there anything that you could have done differently, like for example putting more policy out earlier so people can engage with it?
Look, we should have called out Labor's lies earlier on. That's something got commented on before, but again, I think Australians, as time has gone on through this campaign, they've seen the negative ads, and they'll see the posters, etc., as they go to the polling booths. People are smarter than that. They know that, hang on, what Anthony Albanese is talking about how good Medicare is. Bulk billing rates are down by 11%. People are paying $43 out of pocket to go and see a doctor. If you live here in Strathpine, or at Kalanga, or in other areas around the country, in outer metropolitan areas, people are not making doctor's appointments under this government. So I think there will be a level of backlash and a protest vote against the Labor Party for some of these false claims that have been made. The Prime Minister can't look the Australian people in the eye and say that they're better off after 3 years. He can't even answer that question when it's put to him at the press club. So if the Prime Minister can't tell you how you're better off after 3 years, how do you expect, to tell the story yourself? You can't, because you're not. And the Prime Minister won't tell people they're better off after 3 years because you're not. And now is the time to change a bad government. If we have a global recession, or if we have uncertainty in our region, you don't want a Labor Greens government in power. Have a look at what's happened to the economy in Victoria. Labor has near destroyed that economy. And it's a tragedy because it's such a great state, and we will rebuild Victoria. But when you have a look at what this government has done, the hurt, the personal family hurt that the Albanese government has delivered on Australians is without precedent. We've had almost 2 years of negative household growth. A family of two, an average family, is $50,000 worse off under this government. And I think that people in increasing numbers will send a message to Mr Albanese that we're not happy about the last 3 years, and they'll support their Liberal National Party candidate. If we do that, we can get this great country back on track. We can get our economy well managed again, and we can provide support to those families who are really in need.
Mr Dutton, Premier David Chrysler is currently the most popular Premier in all of this country, according to the polls.
Rightly so.
Yet you and him have not stood side by side this campaign. Why? Is he avoiding you? Are you avoiding him? What's happening?
Well, I'm great friends with and huge supporter of David Chrysler, as you know, but we're fighting this election on federal issues. I think David's done a great job in relation to trying to clean up Labor's mess here in Queensland. I think Queenslanders here remember the Palaszczuk Miles government very well. They understand what Labor did to the economy here in Queensland, and that's why they changed government. Also because crime and bail laws were out of control here in Queensland, as is the case in Victoria at the moment, as is the case in.
But isn't he your Premier enough?
In the northern.
He's popular. Shouldn't you be, standing next to him?
Well, I just finish this point. So in the Northern Territory, where the CLP has inherited, a terrible mess from the Labor Party up there as well. They trashed the economy. Law and order has been out of control, and you brought a CLP government in to clean that mess up. You brought an LNP government here in Queensland to clean this mess up. And what we'll do at a federal level is come in as a coalition and clean up Labor's mess. And we can do that fighting on federal issues. And I've got an incredible team, and we've moved around the country. And this election is about, do you trust Anthony Albanese to deliver 3 more years of better times? You don't. You're not better off. You're worse off as a family, and we're worse off as a country. And I don't think Australians will want that.
Pollsters have identified Donald Trump as one of the main reasons the poll shifted in February back in favour towards Labor when he was streaks ahead last year. We saw what happened in Canada with their election there. Have you and your team done enough to separate you from Donald Trump and those comparisons that Labor continues to draw?
Well, look, I think everyone will have a theory. Mine is that Australians are going to vote for a positive plan that we're putting forward. Now, our positive plan is 25 cents a litre off petrol. It's a $1,200 tax rebate so we can help you with the cost of living crisis now. It's helping young Australians achieve the dream of home ownership. And I want to be the Prime Minister of home ownership and home accessibility and home affordability. I want to make our country safer. I want to make our suburbs and our communities and our towns safer. I want to make our country safer. We're going to manage the economy much more effectively than Labor. That means we can bring interest rates down. It means we can bring the prices of electricity and gas down. It means we can help families afford to live again. And that's what a coalition government will do at this election. And that's what this contest is about. And I think Australians have had a look over the last 3 years and worked out they just can't afford 3 more years of this. Thank you very much.